Lieutenant Commander Vera Holt stood in the observation deck of the training frigate Meridian's Edge, watching her cadets fumble through their first deep space combat simulation. 43 kids, most barely 20 standard years old, their faces glowing green from their console displays as they tried desperately not to get everyone killed in a hypothetical Kryn ambush scenario. Cadet Myers, if you slow your approach vector anymore, we'll be moving backwards through time, Vera called out, her voice dripping with that special brand of affection that comes wrapped in sarcasm. And Cadet Tomlinson, I know you think that asteroid field looks friendly, but I promise you, rocks don't care about your feelings. A nervous laugh rippled through the command deck. Good. Fear was useful, but paralyzed cadets were just expensive paperweights. Vera had been running training exercises for the Terran Defense Academy for 8 years now. 8 years of watching bright-eyed recruits transform into competent officers. 8 years of the same routes, the same simulations, the same predictable outcomes. Honestly, she'd started to think retirement on one of the farming colonies didn't sound half bad. Maybe grow some tomatoes. Tomatoes didn't ask stupid questions about shield harmonics. That's when the actual alarms started blaring. Not the simulation alarms. The real ones. Ma'am, we've got incoming signatures, her second officer, Lieutenant Ramos, announced. His usual calm demeanor cracked just enough for Vera to notice the tremor in his voice. Multiple contacts, unknown classification. They just appeared. No warp signatures, no approach warnings. They're just there. Vera's blood went cold. She'd heard about this. Intelligence briefings that most people dismissed as paranoid fever dreams. Ships that could fold space without leaving a trace. Species so advanced they made humanity look like it was still banging rocks together. The Vel'Kara. Battle stations. Get those cadets to the escape pods, now. Vera's training kicked in, her voice steady even as her mind raced through 1,000 terrible scenarios. Ramos, send a distress signal on all frequencies. Tell command we've made contact with unknown hostiles. The view screen flickered, and Vera's stomach dropped. 7 ships, each one looking like someone had taken a nightmare and given it engines. Organic curves mixed with geometric impossibilities, pulsing with energy that hurt to look at directly that a communications signal crackled through. The translator struggled for a moment, then produced a voice that sounded like wind chimes falling down a staircase. Human vessel, you have entered restricted testing space. Your presence is inconvenient. Evacuation window, 6 minutes. Failure to comply results in disintegration. We are not interested in your excuses. 6 minutes. 43 cadets, 12 escape pods, each pod taking 4 minutes to prep and launch. The math was simple, brutal, and completely unacceptable. Ramos, start loading pods. Priority to the cadets, alphabetically. Move. Vera was already running calculations in her head, running through every trick, every desperate maneuver she'd learned in 2 decades of service. Ma'am, the pods won't. There's not enough time for everyone, Ramos said quietly. I'm aware, Lieutenant. I can count. Now move your ass before I have you court-martialed for disobeying orders during a crisis. The deck erupted into controlled chaos as cadets scrambled toward the evacuation points. Vera watched them go, these kids who'd been joking about asteroid fields 30 seconds ago, now facing the very real possibility that their first mission would be their last. Commander Holt, pod assignments show you're not on any launch roster, Cadet Brennan called out, her voice high with panic. Vera smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. That's because someone needs to pilot this bucket of bolts and buy you all time to get clear. Now get in your pod before I throw you and myself. But that's an order, Cadet. 4 minutes remained. 3 pods launched, their engines flaring bright against the void. For more preparing for departure. The Vel'Kara ships held position, watching with what Vera could only assume was clinical detachment. Like scientists observing bacteria they were about to sterilize. 2 minutes, Ramos announced. He'd stayed behind, the idiot. Loyalty was admirable right up until it got you vaporized. Ramos, I swear to every deity humanity has ever invented, with respect, ma'am, you'll need someone to manage power distribution if you're planning whatever suicidal maneuver is rattling around in that head of yours. Vera wanted to argue. Should have argued. But time was a luxury she didn't have. Fine. But when we die, I'm haunting you first. The last escape pod launched with 18 seconds to spare. Vera watched it streak away, a tiny point of light carrying 6 terrified cadets toward the nearest relay station. 43 kids, all accounted for, all safe. Well, as safe as anyone could be when nightmare ships were hovering nearby like cosmic vultures. Evacuation complete, Ramos announced, his fingers already flying across the helm controls. What's the plan, Commander? The plan? Oh, the plan is beautiful in its simplicity, Lieutenant. We annoy them. Vera dropped into the pilot's chair, her hands moving through pre-flight sequences she could perform in her sleep. We make ourselves such an irritating, persistent nuisance that they focus on us instead of those pods. Think of it as aggressive pest control, except we're the pests. The Vel'Kara spokesperson, or whatever it was, crackled back over the comm, human vessel. Evacuation window has expired. You remain. This is inadvisable. Yeah, well, I'm full of bad advice today, Vera muttered, then opened the channel. Vel'Kara ships. This is Lieutenant Commander Vera Holt of the Terran Defense Academy. I'm experiencing technical difficulties with my FTL motivator. Just need another 10 minutes, maybe 15. You understand, right? Bureaucracy and all that. Silence. Then, your attempt at deception is noted. Your vessel's systems are functioning at 97% capacity. You are stalling. Stalling? Me? I'm hurt. Truly wounded. Vera gunned the engines, sending the Meridian's edge into a sharp banking maneuver that would have made her cadets throw up. Ramos, divert all non-essential power to shields and engines. Make us harder to hit than a greased rabbit in a lightning storm. That's not a real saying, ma'am. It is now. Do it. The Vel'Kara ships moved, their organic hulls rippling with sudden purpose. Energy signatures spiked across Vera's console, painting the view screen in angry reds and oranges. Warning lights cascaded like a very judgmental waterfall. They're charging weapons, Ramos said, his voice climbing half an octave. Multiple batteries, targeting solutions locked. Ma'am, they're really going to do it. Of course they are. We called their bluff. Vera's hands danced across the controls, initiating evasive pattern Delta 7, the one they taught to pilots who had more courage than sense. Let's see if these fancy interdimensional jerks can actually hit a moving target. The first blast carved through space where the Meridian's edge had been approximately 2 seconds earlier. Superheated plasma, or maybe concentrated possibility, or perhaps just really aggressive light. It was hard to tell with alien weapons. The important thing was that it missed. The second blast also missed. The third clipped their port shield, sending alarms screaming and knocking Ramos clean out of his chair. Still alive, Lieutenant? Surprisingly, yes, Ramos groaned, pulling himself back to his station. Shields at 62%. That last hit rattled my ancestors. Vera spun the ship through a corkscrew pattern that absolutely violated several laws of physics and at least 3 regulations about proper frigate handling. The Vel'Kara kept firing, their patience apparently as thin as their dimensional technology was advanced. Good. Angry enemies made mistakes, and she needed them making mistakes. How far out are the pods? 7 light minutes, and increasing. They're beyond effective weapons range. Ramos checked his console, then looked at Vera with something between admiration and horror. You actually pulled it off. The cadets are clear. Don't sound so surprised. I'm occasionally competent. Another blast scorched past the viewport, close enough to make the hull groan in protest. Now comes the tricky part. The tricky part? What do you call what we've been doing? Foreplay. Vera grinned. That wild expression she got when plans started falling apart in interesting ways. Ramos, remember that experimental slip drive modification the engineering department kept pestering us about? The one command said was too dangerous to field test. Ramos went pale. The one that has a 40% chance of turning us into a rapidly expanding cloud of subatomic particles? That slip drive modification. That's the one. Warm it up. Ma'am, with all due respect, that's insane. Insane would be sitting here and getting vaporized like obedient targets. This is just creatively suicidal, which is totally different. Vera's fingers flew across the controls, routing power to the prototype drive system buried in the Meridian's engineering section. Besides, 40% failure rate means 60% success rate. I've faced worse odds at the Academy poker tables. The Vel'Kara spokesperson returned, sounding almost curious. Human Commander, your maneuvering skills are adequate. However, continued resistance is futile. Surrender your vessel for analysis, and we will grant swift termination rather than prolonged disintegration. You know what? That's the worst sales pitch I've ever heard, and I once had a timeshare presentation on Europa. Hard pass. Vera slammed her hand down on the activation sequence. The slip drive engaged with a sound like reality clearing its throat, and the Meridian's edge folded itself through a crack in space-time that absolutely should not have existed. Everything went sideways, literally and figuratively and possibly metaphysically. Then everything went black. Waking up felt like being reassembled by a committee that couldn't agree on where all the parts went. Vera's head throbbed with the intensity of a supernova having a particularly bad day, and her mouth tasted like she'd been chewing on recycled air filters, which, given the smell in the medical bay, might actually be an improvement. She's awake, someone said. Young voice, female, trying very hard to sound professional and failing spectacularly. Commander Holt, can you hear me? Vera cracked one eye open, immediately regretted it, then forced both eyes open anyway because she wasn't about to let unconsciousness win twice in one day. A medic hovered over her, couldn't be more than 25, wearing the insignia of a field doctor and an expression of poorly concealed panic. Where am I? And why does everything hurt? Vera managed to croak out. You're aboard the TDS Vigilance, ma'am. Flagship of the 7th Fleet. You've been unconscious for 4 days. The medic stepped back, allowing Vera to sit up slowly. The slip drive, well, it worked. Sort of. You materialized inside a debris field near Outpost Tango. 17 different ships picked up your distress beacon simultaneously. For days, Vera processed that, along with the fact that she was apparently not dead, not atomized, and not scattered across multiple dimensions. The 60% success rate had come through, though her aching bones suggested she'd paid for it. Lieutenant Ramos, recovering in the next bay. Broken arm, concussion, and he won't stop talking about how you're certifiably insane. The doctors say that's a good sign. The medic handed her a data pad. Ma'am, there's something you should see. It's about the cadets. Vera's heart dropped. What happened? Are they safe? Tell me they made it. Oh, they made it. All 43. But, well, you should really just look. The data pad displayed a news feed from the Terran Defense Network. The headline read, Training Officers' Sacrifice Inspires Unprecedented Graduate Unity. Below it, a video played showing the Academy graduation ceremony from 2 days ago. 43 cadets stood in formation, fresh-faced and proud in their new uniforms. But something was different. Instead of the standard TDA insignia on their shoulders, each one wore a patch Vera had never seen before. A silver star surrounded by defensive shield patterns, with a small ship at the center. Her ship, the Meridian's Edge. Cadet Myers stepped forward to give a speech, his voice steady despite the obvious emotion. Commander Holt taught us that the measure of an officer isn't in the victories they claim, but in the people they refuse to leave behind. She stayed so we could live. She fought so we could escape. And every single one of us, from this day forward, will wear this patch to remember that true leadership means being the last one out, not the first. The camera panned across the formation. Every single graduate wore the patch. Not just her cadets, but the entire graduating class. 217 new officers, all bearing the symbol of one stubborn commander who'd annoyed aliens and broken physics rather than abandon her students. Vera felt something wet on her cheeks and realized, with some embarrassment, that she was crying. Oh, for the love of... I'm not crying. It's just medical bay air quality. Very dusty. Of course, ma'am, the medic said, grinning. Terrible air quality. We really should fix that. A commotion outside the medical bay announced new arrivals. The door slid open, and Admiral Marcus Wright strode in, followed by half a dozen officers wearing enough medals to set off metal detectors from orbit. Behind them, trying to look inconspicuous and failing completely, were her 43 cadets. Commander Holt, the Admiral said, his gruff voice somehow managing to sound both stern and amused. I've been reviewing your after-action report. The part where you disobeyed evacuation protocols, engaged unknown hostiles against explicit orders, and field-tested experimental technology without authorization was particularly interesting. Vera straightened despite the pain. Sir, I can explain. I'm sure you can. However, explanations will have to wait. First, I'm required to inform you that you're being promoted to full commander, effective immediately. Second, the Terran Defense Council wants to give you a medal for valor, which you'll accept because refusing would create a diplomatic incident, and I have enough headaches. The Admiral's expression softened slightly. Third, every single one of these cadets has requested transfer to whatever ship you're assigned to next. Seems they've developed a peculiar fondness for officers who do insane things to keep them alive. The cadets pushed forward, their faces bright with emotion. Cadet Brennan spoke first, her voice thick. Ma'am, we just wanted to say, thank you doesn't really cover it, but thank you. For staying. For fighting. For showing us what it really means to lead. We made something for you, Cadet Tomlinson added, holding out a small package wrapped in regulation issue cloth. Open it. Inside was a patch, identical to the ones they wore, except this one had an additional element. Small text along the bottom that read, first in, last out. Vera held the patch, feeling the weight of it in her palm. 43 kids who'd been fumbling through simulations less than a week ago, now standing before her as graduates, as officers, as living proof that sometimes the impossible just needed a stubborn push and a complete disregard for safety regulations. You're all idiots, she said quietly, then smiled. But you're my idiots. And that patch better be regulation compliant, or we're all doing paperwork for the next decade. They laughed, that wonderful sound of relief and joy and survival. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled past in their eternal dance, indifferent to human drama, but somehow more beautiful for it. 3 months later, Vera stood on the bridge of her new command, the TDS Defiant, a heavy cruiser that had seen better days but still had enough fight left to make enemies reconsider their life choices. The crew bustled around her, running final system checks before their first official patrol. Among them, scattered throughout various stations, were familiar faces. 12 of her former cadets had indeed transferred to serve under her command, and they brought with them a reputation that preceded the ship itself, the crew that refused evacuation, the unit that laughed at impossible odds, the graduates who wore their commander's defiance like a badge of honor. Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from Outpost Sentinel. Lieutenant Myers called from communications. He'd grown into his role nicely, though he still had a tendency to over-explain shield harmonics. Some things never changed. Well, ma'am, it's the Vel'Kara. The bridge went silent. Every head turned toward Vera, waiting for her reaction. She could feel the tension, that electric moment where fear and anticipation danced together like drunk relatives at a wedding. Put them through, Vera said calmly, settling into her command chair. Let's hear what our interdimensional friends want this time. Hopefully, it's not another evacuation ultimatum, because my schedule is pretty full. The view screen flickered, and that same wind chimes down a staircase voice filled the bridge. Commander Holt, we have been observing human military transmissions. Your species' information security is remarkably inadequate. Yeah, we're working on that. What do you want? Clarification. You sacrificed optimal survival probability to ensure the escape of individuals under your command. This behavior contradicts our understanding of human self-preservation instincts. Explain. Vera leaned back, a slow smile spreading across her face. Here it was, the fundamental difference between species that saw the universe as a laboratory and species that saw it as home. You want me to explain why I stayed? Sure. Those weren't just individuals under my command. They were my responsibility. My students. And where I come from, you don't abandon family just because the math looks bad. Family. The word came out processed through alien translation matrices, sounding almost curious. You share no genetic material with these individuals. Family isn't about genetics, it's about choice. It's about looking at someone and deciding their life matters more than your own comfort. It's about being the person who stays when everyone else has permission to run. Vera paused, glancing at her crew, at the patches they all wore now. You analyzed our vessel. You watched our escape. You probably have a dozen reports explaining human tactics and psychology. But you're missing the point. Elaborate. Humans are stubborn. We're irrational. We do things that don't make sense on paper because we care about things that can't be quantified in your reports. Love, loyalty, duty, those aren't bugs in our programming. They're features. They're what make us dangerous. Vera stood, her voice carrying across the bridge. You gave us 6 minutes and thought we'd fold. Instead, we fought. You threatened disintegration, and we annoyed you into submission. That's humanity. We don't optimize for survival. We optimize for meaning. Silence stretched across the calm line, long enough that Vera wondered if she'd accidentally started an interstellar incident. Again. Then the Vel'Kara spoke, and something in their tone had shifted, like ice cracking under spring sun. Your species is inefficient, emotional, prone to self-destructive loyalty. A pause, then something that might have been respect filtered through alien comprehension. You are also more formidable than our initial assessment indicated. The Vel'Kara Collective will recalibrate our threat evaluation of humanity. Commander Holt, your designation has been updated in our records. You are now classified as a persistence predator of noteworthy capability. I'll take that as a compliment. It was intended as a warning to our own forces. Do not engage human vessels commanded by Holt pattern leadership without overwhelming tactical superiority. The psychological cost-benefit analysis favors avoidance. The transmission started to fade, then returned for one final comment. Your patch design is aesthetically adequate. The symbolism translates effectively across 67 known languages. This efficiency is admirable. The comm line went dead. For a moment, the bridge remained frozen, everyone processing what had just happened. Then Cadet Tomlinson, now Ensign Tomlinson, started laughing. It was infectious, spreading across the bridge like wildfire until even the most stoic crew members were grinning. Ma'am, Lieutenant Ramos said from tactical, his arms still in a light support brace. Did we just get diplomatically threatened and complimented in the same conversation? I think so. I also think the Vel'Kara just learned an important lesson about humanity. Vera looked out at the stars, at the infinite possibilities waiting in the darkness. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. But we're the ones who will fly a damaged ship through experimental drives and pick fights with interdimensional nightmares, because the alternative is leaving people behind. That's got to count for something. It counts for everything, Ensign Brennan said quietly, touching the patch on her shoulder. That's why we're here. That's why we'll always be here. Vera nodded, feeling the weight and wonder of command settle around her shoulders like an old, comfortable coat. Outside, the stars wheeled on, indifferent and eternal. But inside this ship, among this crew, something impossibly human burned bright. All stations report ready, Commander, Myers announced. Then let's get to work. Set course for the Outer Rim patrol route. And someone get me a coffee. Saving humanity from its own stubbornness is thirsty work. The Defiant's engines hummed to life, carrying them forward into whatever came next. 43 graduates scattered across the fleet, all wearing the same patch, all carrying the same lesson. Leadership wasn't about being the first to safety. It was about being the last to leave. It was about looking at impossible odds and saying, not today, not to my people. The galaxy would learn this lesson, one stubborn human at a time. And somewhere in the dark between stars, the Vel'Kara updated their files, adding a new category to their threat assessment matrices. Under persistence predators, under unlikely tactical advantages, under species that defy logical prediction, they wrote one simple note: humans. Approach with caution, especially the ones who smile when the odds look bad, especially Commander Vera Holt. So what did you think? Did this story surprise you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this sci-fi story, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe for more mind-blowing science fiction stories every week. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.